A few hours ago, a Houthi missile impacted near the Ben Gurion airport in Israel, wounding at least 8 people. We've got quite a bit of footage from during and after that strike that I'll play here. Now, what we know as of this recording is, according to the Red Shield of David, they said 8 people were wounded. Fortunately, nobody was killed. It looks like the reason that nobody was killed, despite this missile landing near a very populated area, is that it happened to hit about 300 or 350 meters away from the airport terminal, which is pretty accurate for the Houthis firing this, given how far away they actually launched it from. But it does look like everything I'm seeing at this point, this was not intercepted. It was not partially intercepted. It got through Israel's air defense, which is the first in quite a while. They've done a great job at shooting down enemy munitions. Something like 26 out of the last 27 that were intended to be intercepted were. There's a couple that are flying way off course and they just let it go impact the desert and don't waste an interceptor. But of the ones that are actually approaching viable targets, 26 out of 27 of the most recent attacks. That's a lot. And that's because there's been a pretty significant uptick in Houthi attacks against Israel since March 15th. March 15th is when the United States kicked off Operation Rough Rider. It's our most recent series of strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. We've been hitting the Houthis every single day since then with pretty significant amounts of firepower. During that stretch, the Houthis, we've talked about this before, they've really stopped attacking commercial vessels and have instead trained those military-grade munitions, drones, missiles, and rockets at U.S. military vessels in the Red Sea and Israel. And it's kind of one for one. I don't know that I could safely say that Israel or the U.S. ships have been targeted more or less in the last couple weeks. It's almost every day the Houthis announce attacks against each of us. Now, the frustration I've voiced before is the United States is not saying anything about the interceptions. Israel is. We're getting about every day confirmation of Israel shooting down, a lot of times with video footage, showing these successful interceptions of these Houthi missiles and drones, sometimes inside of Israeli airspace, most of the time before it even enters. Now, the reason this here is significant is kind of twofold. First off, it's the most casualty-producing event created by the Houthis since at least December. I don't believe any Houthi attacks so far have actually resulted in a fatality, somebody killed. But back in December, there was an event that a strike that wounded at least 16 people. But this gets complicated because a lot of these are interceptions, successful interceptions. They're just happening over populated areas, so you have fragments that fall down. Other times, there's an event where I think 20 plus people were wounded were injured as they ran to an air raid shelter as the Houthi missile was inbound. So some of these things aren't even happening due to shrapnel or the effects of the actual Houthi impact. It's kind of the side effects, but nonetheless, worth noting. The second key aspect here is, despite, coming on 5 weeks of nonstop daily strikes against Houthi targets, they still have enough of an arsenal remaining of, look, this is a precision long-range munition. To fly this distance and come that close to hitting an airport, that's accuracy. And Israel and the Houthis still clearly have enough of those to be slinging them off every single day. Now, the Houthis put out a statement saying they managed to hit Ben Gurion Airport with a hypersonic ballistic missile, much to the frustration of habitual line crosser. They continue to call everything they fire hypersonic. He can yell as loud as he wants. It doesn't seem to be getting through, so maybe 1 or 2 times more. They say American and Israeli air defense systems failed. Airport traffic was silenced for an hour, and they said, we warned the airlines Ben Gurion Airport is not safe. And that seems to kind of have happened to a degree. Like, the Jerusalem Post is reporting that quite a few airlines, I'll put up the graphic here, have canceled their flights into Israel for the next 24 hours. That's a real impact. You can argue how serious or severe that impact is, and it's certainly nothing compared to if people were actually killed and this missile happened to impact 350 meters in a different direction and actually hit the terminal. But nonetheless, it is having some degree of impact on Israel. Now, my understanding is that there was a security meeting earlier today in Israel with heads of government. We should probably expect some sort of Israeli airstrike against the Houthis sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. Israel can be pretty quick on that turnaround. Like, they can have jets in the air now and maybe striking overnight. So we'll keep an eye out. Tomorrow's report very well might be going over the effects of the Israeli response. Now, all of this comes amidst news that there's going to be a new kind of larger Israeli ground offensive in Gaza. But before jumping into that, a couple big announcements I feel like I have to share with you guys. First off, I did change the batteries in my smoke detector, so thank you. And my apologies for leaving that in the video. no excuse. I thought maybe it was a little quieter than it was. It wasn't. Made very clear to me that everybody, the tens of thousands of people that saw that, heard the smoke detector. So good news. We changed that. It probably won't go off for a while still. Also, for anybody interested, we do a once a week long form podcast, hour to an hour and a half conversation. I'll link that show in the description below. It doesn't go up on this channel, but it's called the Unclassified Podcast. I do it with Ben Wheeler. And this week we had a guest on, John Fowler. He's a former Australian diplomat and the current head of international intrigue. We try to just talk about these events that are happening around the world in more of a conversational format than, say, these videos where it's just kind of a monologue start to finish. So if interested, check it out below. I think we've done 24, 25 episodes now. It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the places. Let me know what you think. But anyways, diving into this report of a coming Israeli offensive in Gaza. This is coming from the Times of Israel. They say the Israeli Defense Forces said Saturday night that it was sending out tens of thousands of call-up orders to reservists as the military was set to significantly expand its offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands of reservists being called up would begin to show in the military in the coming week, according to the IDF. On Friday, during a security consultation, the military presented Prime Minister Netanyahu with its planned stage offensive in Gaza, which will require substantial mobilization. The IDF says that it sees the return of the 59 hostages still held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip as the most important goal of the war, with defeating the terror group in second place after Netanyahu declared that victory over the terror group was the most important aim. So a couple of key thoughts here. It's not surprising at all. We've kind of seen this coming for a while, that Israel is going to push back into Gaza and probably carry out a different type of campaign than we saw before. And there's a few different things to keep in mind there. First off, a big one, and I think we can argue which of these is more important or going to be more impactful. There's probably not going to be as much American oversight this time around. I think a lot of folks here in the U.S. would say that the Biden administration is pretty hands-off, allowing Israel to just kind of do whatever they wanted. But there's plenty of voices inside of Israel that I think quite often are accurate in this, saying, actually, the Biden administration hamstrung the IDF quite a bit. Remember not going into Rafah for weeks on end, allowing the hostages to possibly be moved around and Hamas to further build up fortifications, things like that. That's not going to happen. There's no indications that the current U.S. administration under President Trump is going to slow or halt the Israeli offensive at all. In fact, all of this reporting about Gaza, it's not really making it here in the U.S. news. So for my fellow Americans watching this video, and I know we have people from around the world, my guess is if you are a regular reader of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or you watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you probably haven't seen anything about Gaza in weeks, maybe even months. It's just not getting a focus here, which means that there's not going to be any pressure on the administration to do really anything at all. So something to keep in mind there. The other part, though, we have to think about is where might Israel go that they didn't go before? So if this is gloves off, we can't really assume that it's going to mean more bombing, because the bombing has never really stopped. It's been massive from the get-go, and we've got some videos showing the destruction of the Gaza Strip. A lot of these areas, there's just straight up nothing left. So, what are you going to do? You're going to bomb that again? A lot of the tunnels, it's not going to do any good to hit them with one or two bombs. You need to be on the ground and either seal them up or put demo in the tunnel to clear it out entirely. What we probably should be looking for is the IDF moving into areas of the Gaza Strip that they maybe didn't operate in previously. And I think this might be a little bit confusing for folks, because we look at the Gaza Strip and we think, well, it's so small, and Israel pushed through there pretty quickly, and there were strikes all across the entire territory for a year plus. How could there have possibly been areas that the IDF didn't interrogate? But they did. And there's a couple key ones here that I think we'll call out today. We'll run through on a map to give you an idea where we might expect the IDF to push into in force sometime in the coming weeks. And the reason for this is some of these areas, like Rafah right now, there's just not many more areas that Hamas can hide there. So once that's kind of been squeezed out entirely, you got to move on to somewhere else. And a couple of those other areas here, Deir al-Balah, my apologies for the pronunciation here, in central Gaza, there's been relatively few ground offensives for any serious duration of time since the war began. And right now, it looks like 41% of this area is under no-go displacement orders, as in leave your home, it's not safe to be here. Compare that with 100% in Rafah, 84% in northern Gaza, and 78% in Gaza City. So what that means is that there's a significant portion of this Deir al-Balah area that the IDF has not really focused on all that intently for any number of reasons. I'm not an expert on the exact layout inside of each one of these sections of Gaza, but for whatever reason, that area has been more lightly touched than others. So Deir al-Balah is one. The second is al-Mawasi. This is the coastal strip near Rafah and Khan Yunis. Now, the reason this is going to be controversial as I say it, but it's something we still have to keep in mind. The reason that this one has not been significantly targeted is because it's been designated as a humanitarian zone. It was designated as such back in October 2023, so there's a lot of displaced civilians there. A lot of tents have been set up there. But again, when you're looking at, they're looking for the hostages, right, and looking for the remaining Hamas leadership and Hamas militants, old and new, when you have them in a set, finite amount of space, and you move through, again, a place like Rafah, and if you could confidently say there's 100% no more hostages here, you have to start looking at the areas you haven't gone into yet. Humanitarian zones are areas that the IDF has not operated in. Just want to keep that back in mind, especially play that with the idea that the United States may not be leveraging that much pressure on what Israel should or should not do in this next phase of the war. I would not write it off entirely if we see some sort of movement to maybe displace out of that humanitarian zone and move them to an entirely different location so they can be sifted through, maybe biometrics of all of the individuals there and a thorough search to see if there might be any hostages in that location or below ground in that location. Another one here is the middle areas, Nusrat and Burej. Again, apologies for the pronunciation. These are the middle areas of Gaza. There has been some IDF activity there, but not nearly as targeted as some of the other areas. Again, when looking at the displacement orders, this one sits relatively low, especially with where it is in the Gaza Strip. So roughly 70% of these middle areas are under an evacuation or displacement order. So that's 30% or so that's still likely. And compare that to other areas a little further north, Rafah in the south or Jabalia up north, and it's significantly lower. So again, probably some areas in the middle there that we could expect the IDF to move into here in the coming weeks. Now, a part of this, what we also should be looking at is going to be the exploitation of the Hamas tunnel networks. We actually got a great graphic here, or tool, I want to share that a viewer, Roz, appreciate you sending this over, man, responded to your email this morning. It was kind of late getting on that, but just wanted to say thank you. He shared this website with me from Honest Reporting that I think does the best job I've seen of actually mapping out the Hamas tunnels across the Gaza Strip. I'll pull it up here and we'll kind of run through what it shows. They say for the first time ever, this interactive map allows journalists, academics, and curious observers of the Middle East to examine the scope of Hamas's vast tunnel network and to fully understand the degree to which it embedded within Gaza's civilian infrastructure. Based on open source intelligence, this map currently showcases only those tunnels whose whereabouts are publicly available. As more information becomes available, this map will be updated. Though only a fraction of Hamas's network of terror tunnels is currently plotted, this map allows you to simulate what the full network actually looks like. And there's a little confused when looking at this. There's definitely, the solid red lines. You can click on these and actually see videos and pictures, documentation, like that tunnel is right there. It exists or it did exist. The dotted lines, I'm not sure if those are likely locations of tunnels, if they're mapped and maybe confirmed with radar, but there's no footage from inside of it. But nonetheless, I think this does a really good job. Even if you just go with the ones that we actually have documentation of, videos and photos from inside of the tunnel, it is a shocking amount of underground networks moving throughout the Gaza Strip. And this is going to be a real issue for Israel as they continue to push into new areas. I mean, the fighting in Gaza has never really it stopped for a period of time during the ceasefire. In the last few weeks, it's kind of been continuous. There fortunately hasn't been a lot of small arms engagements with Israeli forces, but it's still a deadly battlefield. We just got news the other day that 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and another 2 were wounded in a booby-trapped tunnel south of Rafah. According to some reporting from Manny Fabian, they say the soldiers here were in the Yahalom Combat Engineering Unit, and according to the probe, they were scanning the entrance to a tunnel inside of the building when it was suddenly hit by an explosion. So these tunnels are going to have to be interrogated. They're going to have to be searched for hostages. The reports that we're having from hostages after their release is that they are being held in the tunnels, to nobody's surprise, or at least some are. So it's a serious threat to the IDF as they continue their operations throughout the Gaza Strip. And I would expect here in the next couple days, we're going to see strikes in Yemen, probably pretty substantial ones, because it's been a while since Israel's gone after the Houthis. And we're also going to see, I'd give it probably 2, maybe 3 weeks, so aim towards the beginning of June, we're probably going to see another significant offensive operation of the IDF moving into Gaza. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.